Today we are very fortunate to have with us Mr. Omer Arras. He is the CEO of one of the leading private banks in Turkey, the Finansbank. Mr. Arras, welcome.
Thank you.
So Mr. Arras, you were originally a professor of operations management, and then you saw the light. There was a better life out there for you, but you went into management, but very quickly you became an entrepreneur, and you started up a company that's very unique. You started up a bank. My first question is, how do you start up a bank?
Well, actually, as you mentioned, after the academic world, I joined the banking industry. I joined probably the best bank that could possibly join. That was Citibank in Istanbul, and they gave us very good training. And the drive came from we can do this also on our own, because foreign banks coming into Turkey with the corporate banking without making a big investment, they're coming up with good products. They were catering the market, and we thought that this was an idea that we can follow. And by finding some capital from some of the initial entrepreneurs, we started the bank in 1987 with the dream. Actually, it was something that we believed in. We think we can do it because it didn't look all that complicated. We felt that we had the skill set, and we thought that that was the right time to do it.
And what were some of the reasons that your bank survived? We spoke a little bit earlier, and you gave a speech to our executive MBAs. Many banks are having problems these days. What has kept your bank afloat, surviving all of these years, almost 2 decades now?
When we look back since 1987 in our local market in Turkey, we have experienced significant crisis. And in all these crises, the bank came out stronger because the competition lost some power, and we went up in the rankings. Basically, I think the focus was we knew exactly what the strategy of the bank was. We knew exactly what we wanted to do and we don't want to do. And we were setting our strategies according to the market conditions. But the most important ingredient, I think, was getting the right people. The banking business is a very much people's business. You really have to recruit the best people to come up with a strong organization that can react to the market dynamics. I think if our bank, Finansbank, is any different, it's different in its quality of the people that we have recruited.
So let me push that a little bit, because I look at companies like Bear Stearns, Lehman Brothers, Merrill Lynch, now Bank of America. My assumption is they've had some very smart people. How could so many smart people get it so wrong? How do you interpret their collapse? Because I think they have very good people. They have
Correct.
very good people, but
correct. I mean, you're right. I mean, on the CV, everybody has the same technical skill set. They're graduated from very good schools and with good backgrounds and so on. But the culture in the organization is also very important. Because we started the bank from scratch, we always wanted to grow and be part of the system rather than short-sighted views of let's make a lot of money this year and get good bonuses or pay these monies to our employees and so on. It was the ownership that drive that we had in the business. Doesn't necessarily that everybody was a shareholder, but the psychology was it's like owning the business, the culture, and we want to prove ourselves in the marketplace. I think that was one thing. The second one, in banking business, you really have to control your greed. You know, how much risk you want to take, and you have to take calculated risk. And the risk taking is, if you don't understand what you're doing, you shouldn't be taking that risk. Unfortunately, one of the problems in today's market is a lot of the banks were exposed to some products. They really couldn't measure the risk level of these products, especially at the high levels in the organization.
And you were a key part of that in a case study that was written about Finansbank.
Yes.
You were described as the brakes, whereas your co-founder, the other gentleman, he was more the accelerator and he was pushing forward.
Exactly.
So what did you do as the brakes? What were you doing literally in your decision making, in your scanning, in your control that helped make sure that decisions being made were rational ones?
First of all, I think the mixture was working quite good. The co-founder, Mr. Özyeğin himself, is a very ambitious man, and he has a big vision, and he wants to go after many different areas. But I try to keep things focused as much as we can, and also introduced a very strict credit process. I think the credit process is very, very important, measurement of risk, and getting the right people into the risk management, and also getting sometimes outside help on better risk management than the competition. Because in a market like Turkey, which is an emerging market, you have to, in a way, learn things as you do, because the competition is really not also doing things very effectively. So you have to be a leader in that sense, in terms of coming up with new systems and designing the processes. So I think that's what we did quite effectively, the risk management and credit process.
And we see this because during the same time, you weren't the only person to have the idea of starting up a bank in Turkey in the 80s, in 1987. There were a lot of other players. They started up banks. They had their own business models, and you were telling me that a lot of them eventually went under. And the key difference was you were part of the banking world, you understood it, but these were coming from other segments, other industries?
I mean, Finansbank was established in 1987. I always called it the bank of bankers. And following our establishment, there were other groups establishing banks in Turkey, going into the banking industry, but they had experience in construction or textiles or in tourism, and they just wanted to go into banking as well. Banking is a very interesting area, I mean, especially commercial banking, even though it's not a very sophisticated part of banking. It's like investment banking, but the fundamentals of risk management must be there. Therefore, I think, did a bit better than the competition because we understood the dynamics better, and we survived the downturns in the economy, which we had quite a few of them in the past.
And now you're part of a large Greek banking group.
Yes.
We know that most mergers and acquisitions fail. Most of them do not do very well. What is it like now for Finansbank operating as part of a larger group? How has this acquisition worked? Does Finansbank, are they able to continue with their culture? Is the culture impeded in any way? How has this acquisition worked?
Well, I think that's very interesting because in 2006, and 1 year before and 1 year after, within that 2-year period, many banks changed ownership in Turkey. Some of them now have 50-50 joint ventures with the big international banks. Some of them have majority international shareholders, and some of them have minority. And the approaches are quite different. For example, Fortis Bank came to Turkey and they bought a bank. They changed the whole name and the color and the design of the branches and everything, and also the management to a large extent. In our case, National Bank of Greece bought Finansbank, kept the name the same, kept the management local. They're only represented on the board level. So they said, okay, we have good talent in the bank, let's keep it. And this has been working quite effectively. And actually, we're transferring some of the good best practices in Finansbank to the other banks in the group. So the integration process is working quite effectively. It's been 3 years now almost, and we are doing quite well.
Normally, in many industries, size and scale does matter. It does help. And I would have thought in banking, certainly scale helps. Capital is required, and if you can increase your scale, great. In your case, Finansbank has been more the kind of the BMW
Yes.
of the industry. You focused on profitability and excellence
New
in
products.
what you do. Have you been hurt at all by not being able to be of a larger size?
Well, actually, in 1994, for example, there was a crisis in the markets, but we were doing wholesale banking, so we didn't have much retail contacts with the clients. Therefore, we didn't experience any serious issues with the withdrawal of the deposits or anything of that sort. In 2001, to a certain extent, the big banks had benefited from this flight to quality kind of a concept, but we managed to go through that period as well. And in the recent 2008 global world turmoil, the Turkish banking market is quite resilient. But now the ownership of all the banks in Turkey are pretty sound and solid, and the capital adequacy levels are very, very high. So we did not experience any negative, let's say, moves coming from the market because we're a medium to large size bank. Obviously, size matters, but the quality of the name and the brand is also very, very important.
On a personal note, you came from academia, you cut your teeth in Citibank, but you weren't there a long time, and you left at a very young age.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden you have this entrepreneurial venture, and you're growing from 10, 20, 40 people up to 10,000 plus. Mm-hmm. How did you educate yourself on leadership, on organizations, on all the various things you need to do outside of the technicalities of banking? How did you feed yourself and develop your management and leadership instincts?
When I did my MBA, I was ready to go into the business world, but then I had an offer from one of my professors to do a PhD, which I found quite attractive and continued on. I think during the PhD time, I had a chance to teach, and teaching also gives you the ability to analyze and also lead people in the classroom. So I think I found that to be an important characteristic, and since we grew the business from scratch, or it's a greenfield operation, we kind of grew with the business, and we developed skills in a way on our own, but at the same time following the best practices in the world, and reading and catching up with the other what's happening in the developed markets and so on. We did not receive any training or any specific consultancy from big companies and so on, up until we came to the levels of recent sizes. But basically, it is the self-drive and the self-creativity, I think, which really made us, and the belief that we have in the business. We thought that we had a good value proposition and we were doing things right, and I think that was the main driver.
So it comes back to your culture. You almost had a tiny university within Finansbank.
Yes.
As you were growing and expanding, there was intellectual exchange and reading and people sharing ideas. And
sharing ideas and getting the good people and getting people from different backgrounds. We have a lot of engineers working for us because, for example, I was the first one who pronounced in a TV interview that we should be hiring statisticians for our analytics business, analyzing the credit card business. And I received a lot of emails from the university students saying that we're majoring in stats. We're very glad because banks were hiring generally economists and business graduates, but we really needed at that point a department called analytics. You really have to analyze your data and numbers, and a lot of quantitative people in one room looking at the performance of our credit card business, for example, which was very, very important. So this the diversity of knowledge, engineers, statisticians, economists, a nice mixture of the background, good people, really created the culture in the bank.
You also said during our discussion that it takes about 70 to 80 hours a week to really make, especially young business, grow and develop and take form. What do you do in the remaining hours besides sleep? How do you develop yourself? What sort of other interests have you developed over the years?
Well, actually, I read quite a bit, but at the same time, I enjoy playing tennis. So that's my big thing. I mean, I spend time, especially twice a week in the mornings about 6:30 I play tennis, and also in the weekends I try to play once or twice. So that is my, on the sports side, that's my thing. But in terms of reading, I generally read used to read a lot on business, but now I have developed an interest in history. I'm reading quite a bit of history right now because I think there's a lot that we should learn from history in general. And I spend quite a bit of time with my family and my wife and try to find the balance in the business and my social life.
Mr. Arras, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you very much.